Welcome back to Raoul's house. As you know, in recent weeks we've been starting to create an indoor workshop, but I reached a point in there where I had to divert to something else. Anybody else who's in the building or decorating trade will know this one too well. That's the way it goes. You get diverted by electrics or plumbing or whatever it happens to be. And so this week I thought I'd do something a little different. I'm going to do a whole room makeover. Well, for you it'll be around an hour, but for me several weeks. But I thought I'll put this up and see what you think, because it's going to be quite radical.
Welcome to Raoul's house!
Lots of things to sort out, notably across the top of the window. Lots of loose plaster at the top, because there was paper on this, and then loose plaster behind. So I thought, right, I better deal with that. If I'm going this far, I might as well do it properly. So that's all been plugged now, and the finish is fine actually. Some problems I've had. Well, there were wall lights here, and big holes they cut for the back boxes. Again, I'm building up in the plaster of these so I can do a skim coat over the top. But whoever put these lights in, I don't know if you can you see how much that is above the level of the wall? What a mess that is. So I'm thinking, right, okay, it's even worse on the ceiling. I'll have to chip all of that out and do the job properly. Well, that's better, isn't it? At least it's level with each side of the wall now, all the way down the bottom. It's starting to go off now. With plaster you've only got a working time of about 5 minutes and then it starts to go off, but you can get a smooth finish right at the end. Just spray it with a little bit of a fine mist of water, run across with this and you get it smooth. The other thing is, if you've got to fill a gap like this, you've really got to make sure that the walls each side are as flat as you can get them. You don't want any lumps or bumps or roll plugs, otherwise when you come to, you know, bring this across it, you're going to hit it and then you're going to get a ripple in that. So, you know, always think ahead of yourself. At some point in the past, this socket was stuck in with polyfiller. Oh, well, fair credit, it was screwed to the bricks behind, but it's left a big hole. And also I don't want the socket there. As you know, I'm putting them a lot higher and I've got a position for this socket, but from what I can see, I think it runs around this room. So all the sockets around this room, comes to this one, then it goes under the wall and it goes to the stair lift, powers the stair lift. The other side runs across. But on the other side of this wall, you see I've got a hole there. I've already got a socket fixed the other side, waiting for the cable. So I'm actually going to run this cable up to there, put my socket in there, run straight through and back again. I think back again. Yeah, straight through, back again. So there'll be two 2.5 cables down there. And I'm going to use this same route because it makes sense. It's going to line up with the stair lift then, as long as it's tidy. But I'll tell you what, you have to put a lot of plaster in some of these holes. So the way to do it is to mix up some plaster and make it a little bit stiffer than normal. I've mentioned this before. Not dry, but certainly stiffer. You know, like the topping on a chocolate cake. And get as much in that hole as you dare. Then let that go off. See, I've left a rough surface and also scored it a bit. And then tomorrow I shall come across and finish that off and get it smooth with the rest of the wall. But like I say, really important that you make sure that the wall on the outside of the hole is as smooth as you can get it. Worth sanding it, and then you'll get a nice flat finish. But until I've done that and that's gone off, I can't paint the skirting. And I'm trying to hold my nerve now with painting picture rail dark grey. But I know where I'm going with this, so it's just a case of holding my nerve with it. but I've started to go around all the door frame now. We're getting on with the painting. Well, I've actually come to the point where I need to start dealing with this fireplace now and get some new plaster on it and get it all smooth and, more importantly, flat. Not just that way, but that way as well. And I'm not a plasterer, but I would guess you use straight edges so you can line everything up. But it's difficult when you've got a hole in the middle because you've got no reference point then. But I realised some time ago I bought one of these. It's a laser level. Now if I switch it over so it's self-leveled, that line is more or less following all the way to the top. Well, the good thing at the moment is I've been off work for over a week and I've got just less than a week left and then I'm back to work. And the reason I needed these 2 weeks off really is for me mentally to recuperate, because I haven't had really a proper holiday. No, I haven't had a proper holiday since I worked for this company. It's always been days here or days there. So I actually booked 2 weeks because they're very quiet at the moment and it's a good time to take holiday. Plus, towards the end of the week, I'm going to look at another job that somebody wants a hand with. And I said, yeah, I could probably do that. It's sort of like evenings and weekends. And I could do with the extra money, to be honest, really. But I've just been twiddling with my laser level. If I look at that, this left hand bead, that's pretty well spot on, isn't it? Also gives you a line in there as well. I've checked that one, that's absolutely vertical. And the horizontal one, don't know if I can do this by winding out. Well, you get the idea, it's horizontal. So really lucky, that's a nice square opening. Now, welcome back. A full 24 hours later, because believe it or not, well, I'm not going to bed, but not far off. It's getting on for 10:30, 11. But I spent today plastering behind here, and I've got that to a level now, but I'm quite happy with it. This is the fireplace that I'm going to be using in this room. Really pleased with it. Bought it from a nice lady in Sutton Coldfield and her husband, accountants actually. Thank you, Alice, for this fireplace, and for your husband helping me to get it in my car, because it only just went in. But we got it back here, and anyway, and it's got sort of screw holes on the back, so you can literally lift the fireplace on, put it on the screws, and it'll stay there. So, you know, some careful measurement to do that. But I won't stand it against the wall at the moment, because obviously I'm waiting for this plaster to go off. I don't want to be bolting up at that against the wet wall, you know. But if you go around this end, you see that's quite, you know, it's reasonably tight against the wall, but you've got quite a gap there. You see that? So I've decided I'm going to infill that with timber, painted the same colour as this. And then I've got this deep red colour that I'm going to paint those two bits of plaster that actually show within the fireplace. I was discussing with a friend of mine, Roy, who's a painter and decorator and also a fine artist, and he's got an eye for colours as well. And I was saying that I won't tell you what colour the walls are going to be, but you can't have too many colours in a room because it just gets a bit too much. But I just wanted to just pick those out in this particular red. It just seemed as it would work. I did think of tiling them, but I think no, just paint them. Keep it simple. Anyway, that's where we are today. I've got a couple more sockets to do tomorrow, and then finally I can say that's the end of all the dust and grit, because I'm sick of it. It gets into everything. So remember all that grit I had yesterday? It's all in that blue bag over there. That's the colour that the walls are going to be. It's called Buckingham Green, which is a very classic colour. Gives a room a sort of serious note, put it that way. But Wick's do an equivalent of it. I forget the name of it, but that's the colour that I've gone for. And also I'm using this type of switch because it seems more in keeping with the room. My white sockets, they're only temporary. When I find the right socket to replace those with, those white ones are going to go. But that'll do for now. But that is going to be the colour of the walls. It's that dark green, and you've got a pale grey, which actually goes up onto the ceiling as well. That is the same colour, it's just the way the light's hitting it. There you go, now you know the colour of the room. But as this is going to be largely, there's the clue, steampunk this room, quite a bit, not over the top, a bit oldie worldy, a bit steampunky, very cosy little room. But I've accrued a few things, some of which came from my stepfather. My stepfather was a wood turner, and I've got a whole carrier bag full of these. If anybody's interested in auctioneer's gavels, I've got a bag full in various different woods, which I'm happy to sell. That's been here since I moved in. It was my dad's. Very typical of him. He used to have a picture of the Moors murderers in a frame in the hallway, and as people came in, he'd just say, "Have you met my relatives?" Typically my father got very straight. He was the only bloke I know that went on a coach trip to look at the West's house, you know, Fred West. Very macabre, my father. Anyway, steampunk owl, that was at the time I bought it, it was about 25 quid. It was a couple of years ago. Now they're over £40 there, and not so many of them about, to be honest. A little brass and copper pot. Actually, it's a mixture of metals. Arabic, I'm guessing. Probably. But I rather like the pot. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a lid, but we can live with that. A brass Spitfire that I bought, I think, off a boot sale a long while ago. See this chicken with his legs dangling? Actually, I promised that to somebody. But it was my stepfather's. And in here there's a little picture frame, and this is significant, this. And you see that baby being held there? That's my mum, and that's her mother. Anybody that knew my mother would say, "Gosh, don't they look alike?" This lady's name was Mona Pearson, and she absolutely loved my mother. Her name was Janet. And then she fell pregnant again and died during childbirth, but she kept this picture by her bedside all the time she was there. And these are the only pictures that my mother had of her mother, and she said she could remember the spots on the dress. That's all she could remember, and it was a very important picture to her, and it's an important picture to me as well, because it's a connection to my grandmother, who I never met. And the Pearsons, I believe, were part of the Talbot family. I think that's where my connection with the Talbots is. The Talbots, of course, owned Alton Towers. They had quite a bit of money. It didn't come down to our side of the family, though. That has to be said. Yeah, and a few books. A book by Mark Twain, which my mother said, "You ought to read that." And I haven't got around to it, but maybe I will when I finish this room and I can sit down and read a book. And this lovely book, I think there used to be 2 volumes. As far as I remember, they were always, ever since I've known my mum and dad when they were together, they always had this book. But it's not particularly useful, but what I do like about it is all the illustrations. Like, they've all got this tracing paper over them to protect the image. It's that lily of the valley. I'm not doing bad, am I? I'm not a horticulturist. Horticulturist? Yeah. My sister is. Anyway, talking about my sister. Well, it doesn't remind me of my sister, but it was my sister that prompted me to think about this. This is the wall under the bay window. Bear in mind, this room hasn't been decorated in probably 30 years, something like that. And but I noticed, and there was paper on it, I took all the paper off it, but it got mould spots on it. And the first thought was, or at least my sister's first thought was, it's all the plants outside the bay window, they're too close to the brickwork, it's making them damp. Well, she's right, that doesn't help, but that wasn't the cause. This is not a cavity wall. It's at least 2 layers of brick thick, and it's a cold wall. And I I thought, well, the problem is, and people that live in rented accommodation or even council accommodation, particularly if they're on a very limited budget, getting their washing dry is a problem. They either don't want to run the tumble dryer because it's expensive to run, which they are notoriously. I've mentioned this before. I don't need a tumble dryer. I found a way of doing it without, even in winter. But as soon as you get a cold wall, any moisture in the air will condense on a cold wall and it'll run down. And if it's constantly wet, any bacteria in the air, you'll get mould. It's as simple as that. So, you know, if you've got to run a tumble dryer, at least vent it outside. These, we'll call them condescending tumble dryers, condensing tumble dryer. They're just as bad, you know. You've got moisture sitting in the air. Now I've got this dehumidifier here, which I paid 40 quid for on Facebook Marketplace. It's been invaluable. Actually, I've only turned it off now because I've got to make this video. But what I'm thinking is, and you notice I've got paint on it because I wanted to see if it would take paint. Yes, it does. It's, well, I wouldn't say it was polystyrene. I'm not sure what it is, but it has got insulatory properties and it's self-adhesive. There's a clear film on the back and then you just get this sticky silver backing which sits against the wall. That'll stop any moisture ingress from that side, and it won't condense on this side because it's insulated. Now there's some stuff called, is it rock wool or wall rock? Comes on a roll, does a similar thing. It is not cheap. This is about 17 quid a roll. Comes from Timu. I bought one roll and I was so impressed with this stuff. Actually, I should keep it off a dirty floor. I was so impressed with this stuff, I ordered another roll because it wasn't that expensive and you get a lot on a roll. And if I've got a wall like that that's cold, I would definitely lay this on and just paint over. You just got a slight textured finish on it, that's all, but that's no bother. And I did think, well, is anybody going to see the difference? Probably not under a bay window, but it would stop that problem completely. So that's why it reminds me of my sister. Sorry about that, Libby. Anyway, where are we now? I've got to put another coat on that wall. I've got to put 2 to 3 coats on that wall, but we are now into the bay window. And the way I've decided to do it, I've put lining paper down here. Now, I don't paper around corners because, well, I mean, I have done occasionally, but invariably they are not true. And that means that when you bring your wallpaper around on a corner, it will really start to ripple up and crease this side because the whole thing's out of shape. So what I do is I come round by about a centimetre and then I cut down and then I start my new piece from there, but not right up against the wall because as people brush past it, they'll catch it. And I actually mixed up a fresh batch of wallpaper paste. I know decorators buy it in big tubs, and I kind of get that when you're on a contract, but because I'm doing it piecemeal, I'm making it as I go, so I've always got a fresh batch. So I've cut these already to length, but you see where I've come round by ½ an inch. This is why I've got the dehumidifier on, because I want to get this dry over the next couple of days. And that will sit into that corner there, tucked up under the windowsill, painted the same colour, and I shall cork down that edge and across the top. And the reason I'm going to cork it, because I've had no instructions with it, if you get a corner start to lift and it's got a self-adhesive backing on it, you'll get bits of dust down there and then it'll start to peel away and all the rest of it. So I thought, no, I won't do that. I'll just cork it, because the corking that I use, do you know what corking is? It's like that stuff in a gun, right? Wilko brand. Actually, it's all right because you can paint over it, and to a certain extent you can use it for filling as well, which is pretty good. But I'm going to cork all along that edge, all along the bottom edge, all along the top, and if I've got a join, I may put a very thin amount on it just to make sure it's sealed up. And that means You know, I'm not going to get any dust behind there, and it should stop this problem with this paint, because it doesn't matter what you paint on there. You know, you can paint these special sort of paint. It won't work because the wall's still cold, isn't it? It's still going to condense on it. So insulating it is the way to do it. You know, in a perfect world, you take this bay window out and put, you know, 2 layers of brick in, but we're not in a perfect world, are we? So I'm continuing the skirting board in this. That's going to need a couple more coats of paint. You can see where it's patchy there. This is just a dark grey undercoat, but I really like the finish of this. And in fact, when I've finished, you know, I'm going to flat down a few areas, get a new fresh tin, and then go over with the final coat. Very important to paint slightly on the wall. Bear in mind this dries a matte finish, so when you come to paper down, it'll stick to that, no problem. Very important you paint just slightly onto the wall, because then you sealed that edge. Otherwise you're going to have bits of white showing on you between your paper and your skirting. So that's where I am tonight. But here we come to the exciting part. Painting behind radiators. Real pain, aren't they? By and large, when my heating engineer fitted the central heating, he didn't give me a lot of slack on these pipes, except for this one in the bay window. I can lift that up 2 to 3 inches, which means I can lift the radiator off its bracket. So what I'm thinking of doing is slacken that nut enough so that I can lay this down and then just nip it up again gently. But that means I can then get behind the radiator, continue with this stuff, continue painting the skirting, get all the back painted, then fold the radiator back up again, and then paint the lower half of the skirting. There's no real practical way of doing it, is there? You know, of trying to get to that area. Well, I could take the whole radiator off, but then I've got to drain the system and all the rest of it. I just didn't want that upheaval, so that's all I'm going to do, is just slacken it slightly, and then at the end I shall bleed the radiators again. So we are in the bay window. These are not my permanent curtains. Okay, another day. I've finished work, and as I said, what I've done is just slacken those nuts slightly. Yeah, a little bit of a leak, nothing major, but it meant I could lift it off those brackets and then fold the whole thing down and then just nip the nuts up again so they don't leak. But I noticed, you see that white line around the edge? That's this stuff. Do you remember this foam, cheap foam draft excluder? Well, it's only actually any good on a door when it closes on the gap. That's what it is to seal the gap. But just laying draft excluder around that edge, I'm presuming that's why it was put there, because they were getting drafts under there. Not great, is it? Radiator's back. Very small leak, nothing major. I shall repressurise the central heating system, bleed these radiators, and I'll probably turn the central heating on for a couple of hours tomorrow, make sure everything's functioning right, go around and re-bleed if necessary. I reckon I've probably lost about half a pint, something like that. It's not a lot to make up really. So I'll do that, and then I'll get my heat. I actually had this rad turned off for quite a long while because we weren't using this room, so they didn't see any real point in heating it. But there you go, and you can see now what I've got to paint in skirting. It's actually, you see where that shadow is under the radiator? Where I painted from above, it actually comes to there, so that's going to be really easy to cover that. And as far as the floor's concerned, I discussed this with my son. I like to discuss things with him. Not that he comes up with an opposing view, but it's good to have somebody to bounce off, isn't it? And I said, well, what I'll do is I will, you know, I can do a board a night even, you know, just do it slowly as I go across the room. And as long as I've got a vacuum to suck up the dust, I can just do each board. As far as filling the gaps, you can buy some stuff called Cork Saver. I discovered over the last couple of days, and it's like a round section of rubber. Comes in various lengths and various thicknesses, and you decide the gap that you need to fill, and you buy a slightly larger one, and then you literally push it up underneath, and it seals it because it just expands out. Great stuff. Even down to really fine stuff to go between the boards, which is what I shall do. So that will seal that. I'm not too worried about not having an airflow, because one of the things I will do is put a vent on the double glazing outside, an air vent, And of course I've got some air movement up the chimney anyway, so it should work out all right, and hopefully it won't be cold in winter. I think when my father lived here he would have loved that, but he used to huddle in this room with a gas fire. I don't know how he managed at all, because you know, he was losing heat absolutely everywhere through the storm doors. You know, I had to replace those. They weren't cheap. They were about £3,000 in the end, but I couldn't see any other way around it, you know. My son and I were going to make tea, going down the stairs, and absolutely frozen. We had to put overcoats on. So I thought, no, we've got to do something about this. So I got the storm doors done, and that has made a massive difference. Anyway, I shall press on. I've got another little bit of insulating material to put on that section, and that's all of the bay window done. But the main thing I wanted to do was get all the paint done behind it. I've already done this wall, that's all done, but I wanted to get right behind there because this is the only opportunity to do it, isn't it, really? Moving on. I was looking at this bureau. It's a job for another time, but while it was sat here, because it was annoying me trying to lift this lid because there's no handle on it. There is now. Put some of those. And they weren't much. I think they were about £3 for 10, something like that, with all the screws. So these were the original. Well, it didn't have a handle up there at all, but these were the original handles for it. I'm thinking probably 1940s rather than 1930s, but they're not particularly good metal, and they're going a bit rusty as well. Despite the colour of it, I don't think it was ever actually brass anyway, so we'll get rid of those. But I think it looks a lot better with these on the front overall. So I'll do that, but I have to be very careful that because the bottom drawer was actually wider than the top drawer, but I'm going to have to make sure that those handles line up, otherwise it'll look a bit odd, won't it? Yeah, and then when I get time I can refinish it, but at least I'll have all the screw holes for where these handles should go. I don't know, why am I doing this? Who knows? Trying to find the right lights for this room is an absolute nightmare. I think I finally solved it. I looked on Facebook Marketplace for weeks. I wasn't going to go out and buy new lights. I like to recycle stuff. But I've been looking on there for weeks, and it was all Next and John Lewis. And actually, I don't care what the name is. I don't care who made it. It's got to look right and be safe more than anything else. But I did buy this pendant light quite a while ago, which is nice because it will light over that table. And actually that was one of the first light fittings I put in here, and even my son said, why are you putting a light fitting there? I said, because I can kind of see a sofa. Well, this table won't be here, neither will this bureau, they'll get moved around, but there'll be a sofa here and a small side table. You need a side table, don't you? And I thought it'd be really useful to have a light above that doesn't actually shine in your eyes. And I've got wall lights to go on the fireplace. The difficult one, oh, by the way, that used to be my mother's. It actually works really well in here, don't you think? And my steampunk cat. That was a picture frame that came from her mum's. Didn't like the picture in it. I think it had a picture of 2 pink pigs. I didn't get it. Anyway, so I took that out and put this steampunk cat in there. It looks very good. But centre light was really a problem for me until I found these. Look, these are nice, aren't they? And as you can see now, I'm slowly working around this edge here. I've had to do a bit of plastering down that wall now just to get everything level, and that will be dry in the morning, and I can give it a light sand and seal it and get some wallpaper on it. But these work really, really well. It doesn't do it justice on this camera, of course. It tends to flare it a bit, but of course they are the Edison bulb type of thing. And there'll be a small coffee table that will go in the middle. Still waiting on the rug. And I'm continuously clearing these boards, or rather not clearing them, cleaning them as I go, so there's no more dust left, no more mess. And towards the end of the week I will start to empty this room at last, and we'll have a bit of space. But as I say, I've got to work around. Also, either side of the fireplace I've got some other steampunk lights to go there, or that kind of style. You notice I've got a fluorescent light plugged into one at the moment. It just gives me a bit of bright light in the evening when I need it. But as soon as I've papered that, then the lights can go on. And this bureau that's behind me that you've seen will fit in that corner. A lot of people said, why are your sockets so high, Ralph? Actually, my neighbour Phil didn't like them very much. He said, oh no, I like them out of the way. But there's a bit of method to my madness. Partly because I'm going to need sockets there for additional lights. I like lots of lights in the house. Be able to change the mood. And they won't be bright white like that. Once I find the right sockets, I will change them. But they'll actually look good on show. Normal 13 amp sockets don't. They're ugly things, aren't they? But yeah, I'm pleased with those. This alcove has been really hard work to get flat. Not helped by the fact that there used to be, you see that patch there, there were pipes that went all over the place on the side of this chimney breast for the back boiler. Now the back boiler I know hadn't been used in quite a few years. In fact, my father used the immersion heater upstairs, which is also an expensive thing to run. Not a great way to do that. That's why we have combi boilers now, much more efficient. But trying to get this level, and I've just done this last bit because there was a bit of a dip in that wall. It actually ran in like that. Anyway, I've run a straight edge all the way up there and it's nice and flat now. So I'm going to leave that a week to fully dry out, although plaster goes off in no time at all. To fully dry out, I find it takes about a week, and at least a week. And if you try and paper or paint over plaster that hasn't fully dried, you'll get into all kinds of problems, you really will. So I'll let that dry out and then we'll get that all sealed as well. And a week later, and I've got some paint on it, I put all the lining paper on it. This wall came out really nice. I did find though that I'm having to use standoffs on these sockets, and that's because, well, I could have gone for the really deep sockets, you know, back boxes, but this brick is really hard to chisel into, and I'm certainly not doing it by hand. And for a 10mm spacer, that's not going to bother me. So I've done this side of the alcove, let that dry off. I've also done the skirting. It just needs a good clean now, get any dust off it, and clean the floor obviously. And if you're wondering what that is, well, that used to be where the central heating pump was put, and I presume, I don't know who drilled the holes, but they didn't drill them very nice, did they? Maybe it got hot, maybe it's still out to vent, I don't know. But clearly I'm going to have to replace that board. This is the problem I've got at the moment. I haven't managed to find any floorboards locally to be able to replace these odds and ends that need doing, you know. But I will do as I get towards the end of it. And next job is to work on the other side, the other alcove. And I'm doing the chimney breast last because I shall put the first section of lining paper, excuse this light, first section of lining paper right in the middle, and then I shall work my way around and finish up in that corner. And I've left a 1 centimetre piece coming around that corner so I can butt up against it so we don't have any gaps or anything like that. But I need to do the other alcove and then we can finish on the chimney breast then. And this is the other alcove, and both alcoves present some problems. This one not so bad, I have to say. The picture rail is missing. As I said earlier, I have saved some from the workshop room, so I will replace that and then we'll get this painted grey. That'll be the first job. The walls are flat, I've already done all those. They're all fine all the way up to the top. Filled up where all these rule plugs used to be, where my father had lots of shelving up here. I will put shelving. I was going to put the bureau in here, but I decided actually it made more sense to put shelves this side. Because I've got the right wood to fit this gap, and it's hardwood, it's a dark wood, so it's going to fit in with the room. And the wood that I'd got wouldn't be wide enough for the other alcove. So I've decided to turn things around. Little problems I did have, because he had this sort of Dexian shelving stuff, he'd actually cut into the skirting, rather unfortunate. You see, it did it both sides. And also there's a big chunk missing on the top of that, which I've remade with plaster. I always find that plaster sticks to wood like to a blanket. So I've run my trowel across that and shaped it as close as I can get it. And then it just needs a little light sand and then it'll all blend in. That's not going to go anywhere. As you know, I put a new socket here. The old socket was there, I filled that up. So what have I got to do today? Well, I suppose the first thing is to get that picture rail cut, and then we'll start putting some lining paper. I'm only gonna, this is the last bit really, apart from the fireplace, that I've got to line with lining paper from these double doors which go into this room here. So I shall run that around there, and then it will come to there and just go around there by a centimetre, and then when I come to paper the fireplace, I'll just paper into it and then just paint it. So we are on the last straight. Well, I say that, of course I've got to do the fireplace, but well, I'm pretty well there with that. I might tomorrow at some point start fitting in, or at least put the raw plugs in for the lights, connect them up, make sure they work all right. Then when I come to paper, I'll just take them off, disconnect the power from those, paper it, and then put them back. That's more or less the way we're going to go. I came across this on Temu, and it's the same size as a conventional, you know, these little mini paraffin lamps. People of a certain age will remember going to outside toilets with just one of those for company, or if you were really skint, just a candle and just the spiders to keep you company. Remember those days? Well, technology's moved on a bit. This is LED. Right, look, it's got 3 settings, depending how you turn it on and off. You got that one, which just sort of glows on and off, a bit repetitive. Turn it off, turn it on again. You've got a fixed light, which is great if you're camping, does the job. Or you've got that one, which is a flickering flame. These are about £8. I thought they're great, and they're rechargeable. Overall, it's you don't actually see all this white. It's basically a yellowy orange colour. Very pleasant. Anyway, maybe keep a lookout for one of those. You know, if you just want to go camping and look the part. You know, the dark ages. Anyway, another great thing from Temu, amongst all the junk on there. And of course, this wonderful carpet that I bought. Oh, that it was a long way. It was a month, but it was worth it in every way. 10 o'clock on a Monday night. I've got a busy work week, and I'm still surrounded by building materials, but I'm actually getting very close to be able to clear out everything that I've got left over and take it to the tip, which would be awesome. I don't like to throw anything away. I salvaged this, which is a brass hearth. It came from my mother's house, but I'm going to put that on Facebook Marketplace because it really doesn't, the size is all wrong for my fireplace. But there were these things that I kept, including these boards here, which are a hardwood, would be expensive to buy, which I'm going to use for shelves on the right hand side of the chimney breast. But the reason I'm videoing this is because finally I've managed to put the mantelpiece lights up as a sort of test. Now, they look very bright, but I can assure you they're not. They're a very dim yellow glow. They look almost like gas lights, but on this camera they flare out. They look ridiculously white. But the reason I wanted to video this, and I've got to step back a bit, is I bought this mirror, it must be 2 years ago now. Again, saw it on Facebook Marketplace. I love recycling and reusing things. These lights were only about £10 each, industrial piping, and obviously I haven't finished this chimney breast, that's bare plaster still. But as I go along, I like to try things out because obviously as I'm painting them, I may change my mind. Now, end of the week, Friday, And I've just got this lined with lining paper. That's come out okay. Obviously I've got to paint it, and then of course that line will go sharp then. What I did have to do is get some of the green behind the socket before I reinstalled it, because I prefer to take sockets off to paper because you get a neater job, I think. But it did mean I had to turn the power off, and my son just came back from uni, and I said, oh, really sorry, but the power's off. Or for what he wants anyway. But I've got a couple of coats of green on that, even while the paper's still going off, still drying. But that'll be fine then. In about 2 or 3 days I'll be able to blitz that with the green. That'll be that done. And then we can finish this. I don't think I've got too much to do, and I haven't got quite so much to paper, have I? Because that's a short length down to there. It's only when I come around to these corners here. So as I said, what I've done is brought the paper around and just brought it around by 1/2 inch. And then when I come around with the paper, that will go over that. That'll seal that all up nicely. But tomorrow I've got a job to do in Royal Leamington Spa. I love Leamington Spa, fabulous place to go shopping, and it's one of the few towns actually where all the shops are open, and there are so many of them. I don't know how it's managed to survive in this internet age, but it certainly has. But anyway, I shall be working there tomorrow, so I won't be able to do anything in here at all. But I shall come back to it on Sunday, and hopefully we'll get this papered. I'm just, for the short term, I'm going to continue with the lining paper, and I shall just paint it the same green, because if I decide that I want to change to wallpaper, it's no real problem, because basically I've got lining paper on the wall, so that'll be alright. But what I may do is bring it round horizontally, being as I might paper it. I don't know, we'll see. We'll have a look Sunday. Anyway, that's enough for today. I suppose this is what you would call the epilogue, because really we've come to the end of this room, well, as far as the video is concerned, because I've got other jobs that I want to continue with. I need to pick up, this maroon down those 2 strips just inside there. That would really set that fireplace off. My son likes the brick effect behind, and I agree. I've got one more brick to chip out. That's at the back of the fireplace, and then the whole thing will look square. But that lantern that I showed you earlier from Temu, I sat down here very late in the evening, and I thought, I wonder, and I just put it behind the fire, my mock log burner. How effective is that? So I'm going to put a bulb fitting behind with one of those LED flame bulbs, and when I switch the visual side of the fire on, the bulb will come on as well. So I'll just adapt this heater to do that. There's the old flue just sitting above the fire, and that was originally for the gas fire. So I thought what I'll do is I'll get some black stack pipes, that sort of sewage pipe that goes up the side of your house, really wide stuff, not rain gutter, but a bit thicker stuff. And I'll just cut about an 18-inch length and just stick it on top, and that flue can actually sit in there. Rather than mess about and cut it, I'll just disguise it. I've sat here late in the evening without a TV or any other kind of entertainment, and thought to myself, this room really has achieved what I've set out to do. And I was guided by steampunk, which has helped a lot in terms of trying to get the look, because I could dress it up more steampunk if I want, but I think it's just right. And do you remember that? I think it's 1960 the film was made. The original Time Machine, H.G. Wells film, which is a great movie. The sequel, not the sequel, there's a copy in it. That's what they do in Hollywood now. Not as good in my view. But this room reminds me of that right at the beginning of the film. Little jobs that I need to do, and I haven't got time to, this video would go on for months if I left it. Just carry on sanding down the floor, varnishing that, keeping the wood quite dark. I've got these double doors that go into the back room, where my father used to keep his piano and stuff. The workshop is in there. And I thought, these doors really do, they're right in your face. And I thought, well, how do I disguise them? And after it, I thought, no, go the opposite way. I should make them panelled or whatever, brass studs, that kind of stuff, in keeping with the rest of the room. But there's no other entertainment here, no TV. I haven't watched TV in 30 years and I haven't missed it. I just buy these box sets of things that I love. It's cheaper than the TV licence. I've got the whole of The Avengers, The Prisoner, the original Billy Liar series, which is so funny. I've got enough stuff to watch me, honestly, for the rest of my life. Really don't need a TV. Don't miss it. And people that watch TV tell me the same. So what else can I say? Well, nothing really, except that I'm going to spend a couple of hours in here this evening just doing nothing. It's a really nice space for that. And can you imagine it at Christmas? A couple of stockings hanging from the fireplace, bits of holly, Christmas tree over there. It's just right, isn't it? No IKEA, no white carpets, especially not IKEA. It's like chipboard rubbish, isn't it, that you've got to fill the back of your car. And it sort of says, look, I'm modern and trendy and designer. And actually, no, you're not. You're gullible and consumerist. Everything that I've used in this room, I've recycled. The fireplace, didn't pay very much for that at all, about £20. Got it from Solihull, only just got it in the car. The sofa and this armchair, my sister very kindly gave me when I first moved in, so that didn't cost anything. This wonderful oak table was donated by a Rouse House viewer, and I'm very appreciative of that. It's a great table, you know, and worth its weight in gold, you know. It's not modern rubbish. That desk, bureau and the display cabinet, that cost me £20. That was Facebook Marketplace. I would say this whole room hasn't cost me much more than £100. It's really about having a vision, retaining my nerve throughout and using dark colours. But I've got no regrets at all, apart from I'd still need to change these sockets to darker ones. I think dark wood would be better, and no white plugs. They'll have to go. They're going to have to be brown or black, aren't they? Same with any cables. They're the only real restrictions I've got. So I hope you've enjoyed these last 40 minutes or so. And if I make any other changes to this room, of course, yeah, I will include it in Rouse House, I'm sure. And thanks for being patient and sitting through this entire process, most of which was repairing damage and things people had done in the past and not done very well. I think I did okay. And that's it. See you next time. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.